Hey guys, thank you for joining me and I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to teach you how to make this digital clock that you can see right in front of you. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's a fairly easy tutorial and guide, it's not too bad. I'll have to watch it a couple of times through, maybe a couple of specific areas to see what I'm talking about or what I'm getting at, but I've tried to make it as clear as possible. Just wanted to take a second to thank everybody that's kind of been supporting the channel so far, as in comments, subscriptions, and likes and stuff. And yeah, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, carry on doing that and supporting me, and I'll just keep making the content. But anyway, let's get on with it. So anyway, for this build, we're going to need 5 main components, pieces of logic. So you can see here we've got a selector, we've got a toggle, we've got a NOT gate, we've got a timer, and we've got an OR gate. So I'm going to break these down on where you need to put these and for what reason. But yeah, it's basically 5 main pieces of logic. Some of them are actually extra that I've put in. For a very, very basic clock, you don't even need all 5 pieces, but there is a couple of reasons why I've got what I've got. Okay, so we've got a layout here, seconds, minutes and hours. So you can see here seconds goes from 0 to 9, then 0 to 5. Minutes follows the same pattern, and then hours goes from 0 to 9 to 0 to 2. So what essentially you need to do is set up the seconds first, and then that will lead into the minutes and then into the hours. So obviously this is going to be a 24-hour digital clock. So yes, I'm just going to demonstrate here what we're actually using. So we've put them on pieces of hologram. So this is so that they can light up, and these are actually stickers that I found within the stickers section of LittleBigPlanet for this 0 to 9. I'm not sure if it was Media Molecule or Sumo that gave us these stickers, but they're fairly easy enough to make yourself just out of pieces of hologram. But again, it doesn't even have to be they don't even have to particularly look like this. It's just that I thought they were like the neatest and most presentable for this this tutorial here, so I chose this sticker. Again, there's a bit of a trick to it with the colours, because you'll notice that, yeah, here we go, these stickers are actually already green. So to get the colour, we need to actually photograph these stickers individually, and we need to change the background to black and white. That's because we want the stickers to shine through white. The reason for that is because obviously white is a combination of all colours. So yeah, I'm just demonstrating here. Look, you can change them, but it's very the results are quite mixed. So yeah, even when you hover over blue, look, it wants to go green. Can produce some pretty cool results, but I wanted it so you could fully change the colours. So I'm just going to show here what I'm talking about. So let's grab the 0. Take that up there. Let's just copy it over so we can get a better look. So yeah, so what we'll do is we'll actually take all of the stickers off. So it's just a plain piece of hologram right now. I'm just going to change it back to white, and then we'll change the background colour. Just takes one press of the colour correction there, and it goes to black and white. You see that? So we want to photograph this while it's white and with a black background. Black background is very important as well, because it kind of hides the rest of the hologram that your stickers are going to be placed on. So yeah, here we go. That's it. Right there. So let's just tone down the brightness just a little bit. There we go. So you can see that. So I'm actually going to put the colour back in a moment so you can see the effect that we've got. There we go. Now we're able to change it to any colour we want. And you can use this trick for pretty much any sticker as well. It's not necessarily a trick, but yeah, it's definitely very helpful, especially for something like this, if you want to customise what your clock's going to look like. So yeah, that's just a quick demonstration on how I achieved that. So yeah, now I've established the layout, we'll move on. Okay, let's move on now. So you'll see here that you can all of the minutes, seconds, and hours on 0 at the moment. That's because I've actually hooked everything up with the selectors. So you actually hook these up with the selector piece of logic. So again, we've got 0 to 9 and 0 to 5. The reason for that is because obviously when you get to 59 seconds on a digital clock, then the next one you get is 1 on a minute, and then obviously 59 minutes equals 1 hour when it ticks over. So that's why you follow the 0 to 9 and then 0 to 5 pattern. So yeah, so we've got a microchip in correspondence with each row. So seconds, minutes, and hours again. So let's hide the minutes and hours for a moment, and we'll focus on these. Sorry about my voice, I'm a little bit sick while recording this. So yeah, you can see the number of ports there is 10, and the number of ports on this one is 6. That's because 0 to 9 on the first one is 10 numbers, and then 0 to 5 is 6 numbers. So that's why. And then you take the first output of each selector and hook them up to that pattern. So the top one goes to the first port goes to 0 all the way down to 9, and then the second one obviously goes from 0 to 5. So you've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you follow that pattern on the selectors and hook them up that way. So yeah, so the first one output 1 goes to 0 like that, and then output 2 obviously goes to 1. So try not to get confused like that. Just think of 0 to 9 as, you know, your 10 basically. Obviously on a digital clock it's not going to display like that, because you get to 9 and then it ticks over. You get to, you know, so that's how that works. So yeah, so the second little row here, you go from 0 to 5, but that's technically 6 numbers, so that's why there's 6 ports, not 5, because you've got to remember that 0 counts as the first number basically. It's kind of like, instead of going from 1 to 10, it's 0 to 9. So when you do that, you've got all of your hologram pieces in place, and you've got that layout like I've got here. You can actually copy and paste it and put it into the minutes. Use it for the minutes, because that follows exactly the same pattern. And you can also do that for the hours as well, but you just take from 3 to 5 away and then change the selector to 3 ports instead of 6, because there's only 3 sort of numbers there on hours at the end, because it's a 24-hour clock that we're making. Okay, so I'm just going to demonstrate here how we actually connect the selectors to each other. So the first output on the right, that top one, connects to the bottom of the next one along. So I'm just actually demonstrating here, look. You put it into the bottom, which is cycle. So when you do this, obviously it connects them all, but it'll actually go through its cycle of each output. And you'll see that demonstrated in a moment when I actually turn that timer on at the top. So at the moment, everything's controlled by this toggle. That's acting as our on-off right now. So you can see that it's actually turned to on at the moment, and the light that's coming off of those wires is hooked into the first input of each selector. The NOT gate is controlling that microchip that the timer is housed. So the NOT gate is actually turned off while the selector is turned on. Sorry, the toggle is turned on, and that's plugged into the bottom of that microchip. So you can see there that the toggle is on. When I turn it off, the NOT gate becomes active, and that actually allows the timer to turn on. So you don't plug it into the timer itself, you plug it into the microchip that the timer is sat in. So that allows the pattern to start, and the timer is actually set to 1 second, and that is plugged into the bottom of the first selector. So that's how we start the sequence. So the selectors themselves, you take the first port of the first selector and plug it into the one below it, and then you keep following that pattern. But to start the sequence, you need to put the timer's output wire into the bottom of the first selector, and you can see that there, just that little pulse, and it's ticking through. So you can see what I mean by the cycle option. It cycles through, it goes back to the top and then goes all the way to the bottom, and then obviously when enough cycles have gone through, will eventually lead on to the next sequencer the next selector getting its input to activate. So you can just see here. Look, I'm just turning it into preview mode so you can see the pattern following. So yeah, the timer here is set to 1 second. Yep, there we go. And it's actually plugged into its own reset at the bottom of the timer. So you just take the output and plug it into the bottom like that. You can see that. I'm just going to let go here. So there we go, reset. So you put it in there, and then it predictably just ticks 1 second. So then you take that timer's output and plug it into the bottom of that first selector. So the toggle is actually plugged into the first input of each selector, like that. You can see that light going into it. So that basically makes everything go back to 0 because the timer has stopped, but the toggle is now on. So the toggle plugged into the first port of each selector actually zeroes the clock for you. So it's a way of resetting the clock. And then if you take the toggle off, it allows the NOT gate to activate, which is plugged into the microchip of the timer. So basically it's acting as our on-off for this clock, and it also zeroes the clock. So yeah, it's take a few moments to sort of look through what I'm actually talking about here. But if you keep an eye on sort of the pattern of the which wire is lit up, you can kind of work it out. So the selectors are plugged into the bottom of the next one, so it's like a cascading piece of logic how they're connected here. Yeah, here we go again. So the first one plugs into the bottom of the next one, but the very first selector, what plugs into the bit that plugs into the bottom of that is the timer. So I'm just actually going to show that here. At the moment the timer is turned off and the toggle is turned on, so the clock isn't working, because you can't have both things working at the same time. If I was to turn the clock, if I was to unplug the wire that's going into the bottom of the microchip for the timer and it starts ticking away, it won't work because the toggle is turned on that input of the first one, so it will just keep going back to 0, so it won't allow the sequence to go through. So you kind of naturally got an on-off feature there to start and stop the clock. So yeah, the toggle goes into the NOT gate. The NOT gate, it's sort of like turned off until you turn the toggle off, and then the NOT gate turns on. So it kind of works the opposite way. But yeah, I'm just showing here, look, both of them are on at the same time, and obviously the cycle can't go through because the toggle is still on. So turn the NOT gate off, there we go. So if I was to switch the toggle back on now, or maybe not, but if I was to turn the toggle on, you'll see that the NOT gate, toggle off, the NOT gate turns on. There we go. But because the toggle is turned off, the first input of each selector is no longer lit up, so it actually frees up the cycle to be able to work. So yeah, just look through this section a couple of times just so you can kind of get what I'm talking about, and once it clicks and you go, ah yeah, you'll understand. Okay, so once you've got all of that hooked up correctly and you can test the clock, we're just going to line up all of the numbers now. So we're going to start with the seconds and put them all in line with that first 0. I recommend using grid for this to get it as accurate as possible. So obviously through the video so far we've been going from seconds down to minutes, then to hours. So what you want to do now is organise the clock from going from hours, minutes to seconds. So we put the seconds towards the right first, and then obviously you follow that through with the minutes. So I've actually lined them all up here. I just did it off camera, but yeah, so you can see there that we've got the seconds at the far end of the right, and then we've got the minutes in the middle, and then the hours on the end. So that's how you organise it. So you've got hours, minutes, seconds, you know, just like a real clock. There we go. Right, so that's the correct way that it should look. And obviously, because I did that sticker thing earlier, you can, at this point, sort of change it to whatever colour you like. So, yeah, but you don't have to worry too much about that. If you can just get the clock working first, you can always go back and change the stickers if you like. I haven't actually glued all of the pieces of hologram together. They're just kind of hovering over each other loose. But yeah, I've just lined the selectors up nicely over the top of each one here, so you can keep track of, you know, everything and what's doing what. So in a moment we're going to move on. I'm going to show you something else. So if you want the clock to be able to sort of zero itself when it reaches 24 hours, I know that obviously I don't think anybody's kind of like ever played LittleBigPlanet for over 24 hours, but if you actually want the clock to work like that accurately, and when it reaches 24 hours, if you like, we want it to be able to zero itself. This step isn't entirely necessary, but I'm just a bit of a stickler for you know, wanting things to work. So let's open all of the microchips with the selectors. So this is where the OR gate comes into effect. So we're going to take that toggle and plug it into this OR gate here. So the let's look at the hours section. So you've got the first section, you've got the second section. So the first bit, remember, goes from 0 to 2. The second one goes from 0 to 9. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to change each selector now to at the point where it's actually at 23:59. So it's about to flick over to 24 hours. So remember, here in the selector, 1 acts as 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So 4 is actually 3 there, representing the number 3. 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to change all of the rest of them now, just so I can demonstrate here. So everything is basically, it's going to be set to the point where it's about to tick over to 24 hours. So I'm actually going to turn the preview on so you can see that. There we go, 23:59. And when it gets to 59, everything will flick over to 0. Boom. There we go. So it's accurate. It's actually a 24-hour clock. So I'm going to show how we actually do that. So first step is we have the OR gate now in place of the first section of each selector, the first input, instead of just the toggle. So before it was the toggle, we've put the toggle into the OR gate, so now we're actually going to replace that with the OR gate, but we don't put it into the first one. So I'll tell you why in a moment. We don't do that. We don't put that there. We just have the toggle put into the very first bit for the 24 part, the 2, the right at the start of the clock. So I'm actually going to demonstrate why. It won't work because it's basically the end of the sequence. It's the end of the pattern. You've gone all the way through the seconds, through the minutes, through the hours. And if you hook that one up with the OR gate as well, it will actually represent a 1 on the first bit, which is not what you want. You want it to completely go to 0. You want it to zero itself. Here we go, look. 1. So yeah, so it's actually gone to 10 hours, which is not what we want. So the reason for that is because that second one there is actually getting 2 inputs in a split second. So all we do is we just keep that one as the toggle. Because it works in a line, it will automatically sort of reset because it goes back to the seconds at the start of the 24-hour sequence. So you just have the toggle on the first input of the selector of the very first one, the one with 3 there. Everything else gets plugged in with the OR gate. So just going to show again what happens when you... So everything else, all of the other selectors have got the OR gate plugged into the first port of the selector. So let's see what happens now. There we go. so it's zeroed correctly now. So on to what we put into the other part of that OR gate. So the second selector here that I'm hovering over right now, we want the fifth output, because remember it goes from 0 to 9. So the fifth one actually represents 4. So the fifth one there, we grab that and we put that into the OR gate, because when it ticks to 4, that's like the reset. So it acts exactly the same way. But remember, that very, very first selector at the front, we keep that plugged in with the toggle, because otherwise it will get two signals. Because that second selector there, it will get a signal from the first input, so it will send a signal to that first one. So that's why you get that 1 come up and it goes to 10 instead. So you take that the fifth output of that second selector along and put that into the OR gate, and then you get your reset. There we have it, guys. That's the start to finish guide on how to make a digital clock in LittleBigPlanet 3. I hope you enjoyed the guide. Like I say, you might need to watch it a couple of times through just to fully grasp and sort of get what I'm talking about if you didn't quite get it the first time. But like I say, I've got confidence in everybody that they'll be able to do this. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Just wanted to take a second to once again thank everybody for the likes, comments and subscriptions and interaction with the channel. I'm having a lot of fun with it, actually. It's more addictive and fun than you think it's going to be. But yeah, just once again, thanks for joining me, and I don't know what I'm going to do next for a project, but I'm sure I'll think of something. So anyway, have a good day and hopefully see you soon.